already, and then there's
I don't know if the
fire engine purchase, so that right now there's $6,500.
and
That was left from his last purchase,
he's looking for $5,000
just
to start.
keep it going.
Yeah, which seems like it's,
Seems reasonable.
that's not a lot compared to the cost of a fire truck, and the more we offset now, the less we pay later. It's always that trade-off.
If we can keep up with inflation.
Yeah. So does this budget have the 5,000 Mert asked for? No.
No, I'm waiting on you all to decide.
So, and I believe today, this is just a full-on review of the budget, right? So
Yes.
we've gone through every section, we've talked about all of it, and now it's time to go through one by one. Right now, just looking at the overall bottom line, we're roughly $30,000 under what we were last year. Do we have a sense of where the school is on their budget?
Yes,
Where is the school?
about 3%.
About 3% over.
And that's high. 3% is the high end of it.
Okay, and there may be more cutting, less than,
Yes.
okay.
And their meeting, is it here
Tomorrow.
tomorrow night?
Yep.
4:30?
Tomorrow,
Sure.
we're turning their meeting here for their, it should be about done.
So that will work out good.
Okay, so does anybody have a preference on how to work through this? Do we want to just start at the top and go right through? It's historically, I think, what we've done. All right, let's start. 2 of 18. General government, select board, elected salaries, secretary. Up $500, which I believe is all cost of living. Is that right, Jan? General government, municipal buildings, this is up.
Cleaning and supplies. For the first one.
Oh, wait a second, no, that we're down.
Oh, is it down?
Overall is down. We've added $5,000 in anticipation of changing the town's email server to something that costs roughly a little bit more than what we're paying now. We did not put additional money in for the website, right?
I did 5,000 for future website, no.
Web website.
Development.
Yeah, going.
Would that could come out of here too? You want to?
I don't know, so the website is a project, is a large scale project, I think, to make something that is significant, an improvement on what we have now. Someone's got to spend a lot of time and energy to do that, and then everybody who works for the town has to spend a lot of time and energy supporting them, writing content, all the stuff that you need for the website. So I don't know that without a plan, we're prepared to bite that off.
Yeah.
I feel like I would like because often emails and websites are connected in the web domain, that be considered as we look at the email for this year, but maybe next year is when we talk about website.
Great. So it sounds like we'll leave that as it is. We'll have extra money for email with the understanding that we're likely going to make that change relatively soon. And with a caveat, as pointed out by Jay, we ought to make sure that whatever we're using for email is going to work well with whatever we are thinking about for future website updating changes. It's nice when that stuff is seamless. There's lots of companies that will do all of it, and we can pick one of those, I think. And Paige, I'm sure, will have ideas. Moving on, general government groundwater. We're moving money to capital reserves, so they'll have that when they need it. Good committee, that sounds like a reasonable thing to be doing. General government. That's gone down a little bit. And I think largely because new codes enforcement officer is less, is that right?
Well, that's just the first section. The second part of it is on the next page. So it went up to 135,000 from 97,200. And that's to do with RJD, and we have to pay the balance of the reval consultant. So then assessing is 55,600. It's basically what Vern had received for a year, and then that 40,000 is the balance to pay the reval.
And the reval is not completed yet.
No, by fall. they'll have to pay to receive all that money.
So when that revaluation happens, that's going to be affect next year's tax bills.
Correct.
Okay, and I presume there's some kind of appeal procedure if someone feels aggrieved.
Yes,
People ask me
there's,
about this.
yeah. And when they send out people's new assessments, that would be in the letter to the body, because you have, I think it's 180 days to appeal any tax bill.
Okay.
But, yeah,
That's not for today. Good. General government. We've moved the $50,000.
I haven't yet, because we're just now, I'm using, we have used Cressica Brazier, so I paid her some out of that.
Okay.
And if anything else comes up before the end of the year, by the end of June, whatever's left, we'll move over to, capital reserve.
Sounds good. Anything else from anyone on this before we continue? Hearing none, page 14. Preschool, we added $18,000 this year to help support the preschool. The request was primarily about providing health insurance to the teachers. I know that they're having a difficult time filling the positions right now. Seems like a good thing to support.
Hold on. I'm sorry, I do have one question. What did we decide on the copy machines with all of that going up in the copy coverages?
We don't-
I haven't gotten a hold of a human being to talk to about our agreements, but it's for 3 machines. I think 2 are leased. 1 does not have a service contract on it anymore. 1 bill is for just $6.70. It's some tax that they have to bill us separately for. So I haven't talked to this guy.
Okay,
The lady at Icon, or Rico rather,
right.
forwarded it to him, so.
Can I ask you a question? What is the mapping, the line 2518?
For assessing maps every year, they get updated. They get a new sub-tax map.
And we outsource that?
Yeah, it's aerial survey.
More questions? Hearing none. And back on to page 14, or I mean, 4 of 18, sorry. Comprehensive plan, not doing that this year, we did that relatively recently.
No, I was gonna remove that, but it scared me. I thought, if I remove that, something's gonna come up and they're gonna want
Someday we'll have to redo it again.
yes.
Oh, there are 2 mapping lines, one of them is blank.
Oh. Oh, that's in comp plan?
Yeah, well,
That
that's,
whole thing we don't.
yeah, that mapping was specifically related to the comprehensive
Yeah.
plan, and we
Okay.
did the entire thing. a few
And I
years
probably will go back and just take this out of ours. It may not stay on Trio. But there's nothing in there.
back. Sounds good. On page 5. Public safety. Going flat with this exception of the cost of living for MERS. Moving on, public safety office, cost of living for admin, Fred Porter. Fred has largely flatlined his budget for the last few years. EMA mandated training, same, public safety communications, that's also the same. Streetlights, we're going down a little bit. Looks like that ought to be right about what we're spending, at least historically. On to maritime emergencies, Fred has some money in that.
You know, remember he wanted to add that was, water safety, water rescue, but he wanted to.
The health and welfare budget. EMS on call pay, rental. A little bit up over last year, not by very much. Ferry runs are down a little bit because we have money in capital reserve in case we run into a bigger year than is expected, hopefully not. Mutual aid is going up, and I think because,
And that was new
right,
for this year.
that's because they were gonna start charging us for things they hadn't charged us for before, right?
Correct, this new, Northeast ambulance that when they come up, because I think I was gonna mention before, it's funny, because Lincolnville went up, and they said so many calls were coming from Lincolnville, but it was really Lincolnville Beach.
Right.
I think that's,
Health center subsidy is up a little bit. I think we projected more revenue from the health center though,
Correct.
so that's also, well, the subsidy takes that into account though.
What was the revenue? Was that 175?
you mean what we were projecting?
Yeah.
For patients, I went 150. Just for the patients, last year I went 130, just because it's been a off couple of years,
COVID year.
COVID year, couldn't really anticipate CARES money, that was a lot of the year before, FY22, there was 171,000, but a lot of that was.
Carolyn Fellow, that's Liv. For health and welfare. Public health. We've got $10,000 for engineer, coast community planning.
And those other ones I put in there for the community grant. We'll be paying out of there, we'll be transferring money that we've got grant money there and becoming, the expense will show up here next year, but we're not budgeting.
The $10,000 is just the local match that was grant required.
Yeah,
On to page 9 of 18, public works, road maintenance. That's down a little bit, it looks like primarily related to Acre Island and less money needed for Acre Island.
and nothing in there this year yet for paving.
Nothing in there for paving. I feel like paving is gonna be something we'll talk about perhaps at the end of the budget. We've gone through everything. So my preference is historically how we thought about that, and we have a lot of money in capital reserve for paving right now, but we'll be using a good charge of that, I think, this year. Public works, personnel, supplies, that is cost of living. Again, I'll mention that I hope that next year we can move the associated expenses with employees into the same department, so it's easier to track as opposed to breaking out FICA in its entirety elsewhere.
I'd have to get someone to do that. I'd have to hire someone, because there's FICA everywhere.
Right.
In the, every wage.
Right, so like anywhere anybody works, FICA is a percentage of how much they get paid, right? So we have to be able to break that out, I would think.
But like for the EMS people in the fire, they all get.
I would say I'd be happy with the projected additional cost, and whether that was a flat, this is what a percentage we think, that doesn't even necessarily need to be in the budget, but says this is what the real cost is, it's actually 25% more based on what we project for insurance and FICA and all the other stuff. Just to think about what the real cost is, I just think it's more useful than having it divided when the real cost of hiring somebody is more than just what they get paid. That's, you know, a topic for next year, but just something to think about that I think would be helpful when thinking about the budget next year. Moving on 10 of 18. If anybody, and feel free, if anybody has any questions or things they want to discuss, to stop me. I'm just sort of barreling forward. Public Works, snow removal.
Refresher on supplies, why that jumped 700,
What number are you at snow?
2510 at snow removal. It went from 250 to 1,000 when we've been doing 16 and 200.
I can take it down. It just like, I felt like, wanted to put it up. And we're not done. The cutting edges are separate. He hasn't bought theirs yet this year.
Yeah, I guess the question is, we haven't spent more than $250 historically in that line, and what's the reason for bumping it up, I guess is the question.
I've got feeling you can take it down.
I would take it down, back down to 250, I think that's a reasonable thing, but I also,
I mean, even if we're not done yet, and we're already at 200, I would even 3 to 350.
let's,
If we think that it's gonna go up,
let's say 500 and give it a big cushion.
great.
Take it down to 500. That's line item 2510 under 45.3, Public Works. Snow removal, it's an increase over last year, but not, I mean, it's not a substantial increase in dollars, it's percentage it is, but. 45.4, Public Works, building repair and maintenance. Lincoln annual maintenance. That's been reduced. Museum maintenance, we've done a lot of work on the lighthouse and the museum, which is good. This is down quite a bit, but a lot of that is the not needing to spend as much on the museum. Is that right, Janet?
Correct. They're gonna be doing fundraising.
Okay. Public Works, infrastructure, resiliency. Yeah. Public Works, Energy Committee. This is supplies, travel to meeting, continuing weatherization. We had this discussion about that, right? This is the continued work that we've been talking about for the last, well, maybe more than a year. Yeah. On to page 1118, waste removal. Equipment, except for pumping dues, that's gone down a hair. Waste removal, transfer station, we have employees, we have power, oil. It is up a little bit. Casella is about the same. Recycling expenses, bags are up $10,000. For collection, I think that as we talk more about what to charge for demo bins and disposal and how permitting might work going forward for larger projects to require their own demo bin, I think that's going to change, well, both the cost and the revenue, but I think generally we agree that the cost to send it off is more than we're generating, so that ought to be a net positive. And I think this is probably something for next year to look back on when those changes have been made, and we can have a year's worth of data to say this has been the result. 1218, recreation library. Cost of living, we've got reduction in power used. There's not a whole lot in increase, primarily cost of living and perhaps only cost of living, although I see a few lines here and there that are up slightly. Anything on recreation library before we move on? Recreation museum,
2561,
2561.
back on library.
Yep.
So we've only ever budgeted 1,300 for it, and it's continuously like $3,000. Do we need to take that up more, Janet?
No, because I have a capital reserve that we can draw from. There's two library capital
Okay.
reserve. One's restricted and one is.
Do the Friends of the Library also fund some of these things?
They are more apt to do things outside or buy something big. Not
Curious.
periodicals, they're not magazines.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that she was getting what she needed there on it. But yeah, that makes sense of that.
Moving on, 13 of 18, museum, we've got power, telephone. Increase for website.
Well, that's not all the website, that's, because in this year's budget, it's Catherine Benjamin Mary is doing the website, and there's funds for this year, and you can have an email from Dave. That's all. I'm trying to explain.
Kind of a weird note.
115 annual fees will be for the website, plus a one-time design. Oh, that's for this year. Yeah, it was kind of confusing. But it's more than just the website. I think the website will just be about 115. And the other, he increased the actual supply line from 1,000 to 2,000. So that's why I thought. They're gonna be doing a lot of work in there. There's been painting going on and new, working on their displays.
I don't know if this is in was this before we had the conversation about, Seacoast Security and the museum? I
This
wonder if this is to cover some of the cost of perhaps putting up just a simple webcam.
No,
I know that Dave did send an email, cause he had saw comments in a minute about website questions, but I guess my, so sort of related. But back on page 10, we have line 5512 has $21,035 for museum maintenance. I just feel like having this in two places, it makes it hard to see really what we're spending
On that item.
on that item.
Yes, I agree.
well, the maintenance in the account, the museum account here shouldn't be for big, they're not shingling or painting or, I mean, they're doing just little things inside the building. That will be,
Right, it's just
The-
not having it in one place that I think can be,
Confusing.
yeah. I mean, if somebody who is not familiar with the budget goes through the budget and says like, what does it cost to run the museum? They're probably gonna be looking at this and not going through the budget to find, under Public Works, where, the other line items that might affect it, or elsewhere in the budget for that matter. And I know this is a conversation that we've had, not about this particular thing, but about the budget in general, about Trio software in general, and about how to make the budget more accessible to, the town generally, which I think is working towards that is always a plus. And so I think whatever we can do in terms of consolidation, and making it clearer, whether that's just consolidating, changing the titles, all of that is a step in the right direction. I think.
so are you taking money from his supply?
I don't think that, I don't think the discussion was
Public
about
Works?
taking money from we're moving it from one place to another more. I mean, I don't wanna speak for Shay, but it sounded to me like it was just a comment about where different items are in the budget that are on a related thing, and it makes it hard to follow how much it costs, for example, to run the museum.
Right, so, I mean, we're spending $21,000 on line 5512, and then we've increased now we're spending $10,000 on interior maintenance. It is just, yeah, it's hard to,
Interior maintenance on,
so line 2511,
oh,
which makes sense, but the 2135 doesn't have any, so I just want to make sure that we are not,
Double dipping.
right, duplicating.
I can find this. He's broke.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that necessarily that we reduce it, I just want to be clear about what is,
The distinction between what is museum maintenance and what is quote interior maintenance it's hard to know what that distinction is, at least the way they're described here. And I suspect that the rationale is more who is coming up with what portion of the budget, and that this is Dave's portion that he's thinking about, and this is the portion that's coming from the town about what the town is expecting to do for maintenance. But it does, I think, create a little bit of confusion.
yeah. I know that Dave did send a clarifying email, I'm trying and failing to pull that up at this moment, but I know that a lot of thought went into it, I just think having, a note or clarity around the different items would be helpful.
Because his equipment repairs, is that what that was for, Chen? It said, increased by 5,000 to catch up on some maintenance.
This is Lauren. Can you hear me?
Yes, Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if Carrie can do anything on your end. The volume's a little low and I've got mine up to maximum. If there's nothing you can do, that's fine. But if there is something, that would be great. Or just
Well-
speak up a little bit louder, maybe would be the only thing.
So I've been looking down at my page, Lauren. I'll try to speak louder and clearer. I don't know if this is any better.
It is, thank you.
Great. I will do that so you can participate.
Thanks, guys. Hello to everybody.
Hey, Lauren. Any thoughts or recommended changes regarding the museum? Are we gonna continue? We want to ask for a clarification about what the distinction is between specifically 5512 and 2511, which are totaling, you know, a little more than $30,000 in maintenance for the lighthouse this year.
I think information would be helpful.
Great, let's see if we can get that.
And
breakdown.
I almost feel like I would have it in my email, but I can't find it. Do you remember, do you?
I thought I,
Maybe between meetings, it could,
yeah, maybe.
I know that he sent an email to both of us recently with.
I mean, I kept one attached, but it was more saying about the website, but that was being done in this fiscal year budget, not next year.
Okay,
All right, so we'll ask for that clarification. On to recreation harbor facilities, we have the harbor master, parking enforcement, deputy harbor master. Maintenance is down. I believe there's no plan to build a new float this year, which helps that line item. When do we normally pay the amount to Lincolnville? Did we wait?
We
for that?
just did.
Oh, we just did.
I think it was the last warrant.
Okay. And do they ask, or do we just send it out as a matter of course?
They've asked in the past, but in going through the budget, that's why I like to do that. I wish I'd done it before the budget started. I didn't remember, and you would see that it wasn't, I know, but it did just get paid.
You know, that was a long discussion a few years ago about supporting Lincolnville with respect to the.
Yeah, but in your packet tonight, I think, or else I just am telling you, they just sent a letter thanking the board, thanking us for that money.
Great.
And grateful.
Shellfish conservation, about the same as it's been. Recreation, we've had a long conversation about this and about the summer recreation programs that are happening this upcoming summer. The need for additional money for housing that program and perhaps being able to pay for that out of the current year's budget, given the timing and the available money from this year's budget. I do see a note, this is very helpful in terms of right below what the anticipated revenue is. I think that's a good way to do that and bring it all together so we can see that. Any questions, comments, thoughts on this before we continue?
I'm so sorry. 3010 is the travel and bus for on and off island with the Quicksilvers. Is that only Quicksilver? Or bus
Travel
included?
That's the bus, island and off island,
So
and
48
Quicksilver, it's several things.
Okay,
It's
so
paying the driver, it's probably.
4018 is travel and drivers,
I don't
like we
know
have
that-
double.
Well, that's,
I don't recall Quicksilver ever having taken
No,
the summer camp anywhere.
but the ferry fees, I don't think that they count as students, and so like that's okay, but I'm trying to figure out if the travel and drivers is the same as travel and bus.
no, I think I thought I remember him saying, wasn't the 5,700 a new program that they were planning to do?
swimming.
Yeah,
That was separate from adventure camp, that the travel bus on and off was for adventure camp and,
I think that's right. Was it a swimming program at the Y?
They're going to be taking kids over to the Y.
Okay.
Um, will say, I do note that we have consistently budgeted much more than has been spent for the recreation
Mhm.
department. And I will say that this has been a strange couple of years and perhaps
Yeah.
it's not representative of what they actually spend, so I'm not inclined to cut that
No.
back, but there will be a point at which
Mm.
we'll be budgeting 50,000 and spending 20 year after year. It will make sense, I think, to try to align the budget with reality.
Yeah,
going
and how
forward.
their hiring goes, they may be looking for more new people this year, some of their other counselors did not return.
15 or 18 provider agencies. These are groups who have provided documentation to the town about the benefits they provide to various island residents. I think they're a great group of organizations that have done a lot over the years for the island. It's good to support them, especially as they support members of our community. It's a little bit more than last year. There's a couple of new asks, which are for a couple $100 a piece, and there are some larger asks based on increased usage, which I think is all reasonable. Outreach worker is increasing a little bit. I think that's been a very successful program and has been a good thing since we started that. It looks like it says here in 2019, just a couple of years ago. Any thoughts on that? Memorial Day wreaths, cemeteries, insurance, and here's what we talked about before in terms of the additional cost that is associated with, not, well, again, not all of this is payroll costs, health insurance, workers' comp, retirement, FICA, wellness program, unemployment, but then there's also the airport insurance, which is not that much, but also not related to employment.
How much of the insurance projections are projections versus kind of new quotes that we have received?
They are projections and based on what we have spent in this year.
Okay.
So would that satisfy you? I mean, if like the airport and the risk pool wasn't in here, they're the only two things that aren't
I think
related to workers.
right, I think we want the things that are related to workers, not in a big lump right here, but in where we're paying workers at various places in the budget. So, and
I'll check other towns and see if they do that or how they do that. I mean, I've never.
yeah, I just think, well, so at least when we're talking about what it costs to run a particular department of the town, it's easier when you're looking at more than, you say, oh, it costs X, Y, and Z. We've got 3 people working. This is what we pay them. That's not the real cost for the employees, right? Because we have all these other things that go into it, and just thinking about what the
Does
cost
the
is.
school do that? Oh, you don't know.
I don't know. I'm not like others.
I mean, it sounds like business, how a business would do it.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable for someone to look at what the cost is for me.
We do it under principal, like teachers, secondary teachers, stuff like that, and it's all broken out, and so you can see exactly what mine is versus what Sally's is, all in the same line for it.
The FICA, you mean, the health
Yeah.
insurance, everything is right there.
It's a double-edged sword, because sometimes it's annoying, because you wanna know how much are you paying for insurance for grants purposes, and then you have to go through and add it all back up.
Yeah,
But then
there's a,
when somebody's looking at it, going, how much does it cost the school to actually have me or Sally? Or even the teachers, like how much does it cost to have all of our high school teachers? That lump sum is right there.
there's
And
certainly
it's an
times,
easy way to do it, yeah.
there's certainly times where you would want to know an aggregate number for
Right.
whatever reason, but. And again, I feel like for me, and I don't wanna speak for the entire board, but for me, I would be comfortable with. A ballpark percentage of it actually costs X percentage more to hire this person. As a general matter, like FICA is a known thing, health insurance, that depends on.
Retirement.
Yeah, all those things. Some of them are not direct percentages of cost, right? So some of that's gonna have to be, unless it's broken out individually, going to have to be a percentage based on, however it happens. But I think that's enough for me to feel like, oh, this is roughly, it costs us, I don't know what the number is, 25, 30% more to hire this person because we have to pay associated benefits and taxes and insurance. So. But. Auditors, we have this conversation every year. We have to have an
You
audit,
see that little red line?
whether we like it or not, and I
I
asked
know.
about it enough that Jan has kindly put the statute right there in the budget. Leave that in there for now. We do have an audit every year. We've got.
And we haven't paid them anything yet, for 23, there's nothing.
We've got a great staff here who do a good job, so fortunately for us, we have not had any trouble with our audit, which is good.
Expensive grant, recycling.
It is, it's expensive for, but necessary. Dark Harbor wastewater treatment reserve, we're building that back up. No float and incline, we do have money in reserve, we're not planning on replacing anything. Municipal buildings, putting some money in that. Solar salt town office, this is buying out our solar arrays. This is something we anticipated doing when we put the systems in, and I think it is.
And then will we see a great reduction in our bills when we own them and not have to
That's
pay?
right. Right,
And that's what I'm looking forward to.
because I think,
Because we just had an electric bill, and I think our electric bill is quite large for this building, and because the snow is all over the panels. Right. A month.
I think that my recollection of the power purchase agreement was that they were charging us pegged to the CMP price until we owned the system. And it was a net zero for the taxpayers until we bought the system out, and they had other folks who were getting essentially the tax benefit and charging us for buying electricity. I
Because
think.
we do pay quarterly to Envision and this other company, Blue Sky, or whatever it is, that owns Up Island.
Yeah.
So,
But that'll be nice to own that, and then we'll
yeah,
just
be
get all the
anxious to
electricity.
see how that works out.
Yeah, it'll probably save, it'll cut off a lot more in the summer than the winter, but it's still all net positive. I think that's a good thing for the town to have that. Police cruiser, dash camera, new cruiser. Equipment repairs, health center, electronic records, we've talked quite a bit about that and the potential to leverage that to essentially, do a better job of billing from the health center. Sea level rise,
I put question marks, I couldn't remember Shay, he said,
Yeah, that's what we talked about.
so right now, we under 57015, which is the capital reserve account for paving, we have not put any money in. I don't believe we have any money in the budget generally, and we have $476,000 in the capital reserve account. Historically, we've spent three,
350,
yeah,
and
and
how much?
paving when we pave at a time to make it worth
Right.
having,
And,
to come out and get something actually done. I think working with is it Mike Mariner as the person who has been essentially a paid consultant for the town to decide what and where to pave and how to get that job done has been a big help for the town. I think we ought to put some money away for paving. Right now this was probably the place to bring up the fire equipment reserves.
Correct,
fire engine
right.
reserve. I think I'm on board with putting $5,000 as requested by Mert to start.
The
that.
fire engine, was it the engine?
I believe fire engines,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
270-11. $5,000, I think that makes sense, so we can start saving money for that. As for paving, I think we ought to put some money away right now with that $5,000. We're roughly 25,000 under last year's budget. I guess I don't have a recommended amount that I think we ought to put in, but I think we ought to save some more and soften the blow next year rather than, we have the ability to flatline the budget this year. But I think that would result in a bigger jump next year. I'm not sure which is preferable. But I think perhaps somewhere around $75,000 might be a good place to start for getting most of the way to another paving round this year. So I'll open it up for discussion with what folks think we ought to put for away for paving.
Would you say buys you $100,000, buys you what, in terms of distance?
I don't know anymore. It used to say a mile, but I don't think that's.
Okay.
True.
And
Like
then,
3/4 to a half now.
yeah, and then I think that we don't always do a full page, some of them get, like, I don't know what they call that, when they put less on.
Or shim.
Shimming or half of it,
Layer, and sometimes, yeah. And this year I hope to do the library, the upper parking lot, and I know that's about 10,000 or 15. I tried to get the trustees to pay for that last year. They didn't do.
We have, I think historically, we've had a working list of areas most in need of.
It's what Mark Craig used to keep track of for me, but I mean, we have a couple things left still from that list that we didn't do, we kind of. Went over, that's what Mike Marin and I would take him around and look at the worst spots, and people like to tell me, you know, spots that they like, and spots.
In
The narrows.
I mean,
No.
I feel like an individual request is maybe, it's not something to discount, but it may be, just a piece of the puzzle.
Right, we just write it down and.
Yeah.
Might work out for him.
So you're gonna put 75 in there?
It's a topic for discussion. 75, we would bring the budget, up about $50,000 over last year, which percentage wise is quite small.
Could I ask if we pause on that just until we finish the last page, because I have a couple of questions about the last page.
Yep, paving is on pause. Let's continue with that to page 18. We are,
Yeah, sorry.
debt service, we have paid off the Dark Harbor wastewater treatment, that's great. Broadband is down a little bit, which is good. The municipal building project,
So this is what information I got from Vern, if we did this fall, go to the municipal, bond, main municipal bond bank, and what we would have would be an, interest payment next May. And he's calculated out it would be around 45,000, then that next budget, we put in whatever the principal is in another interest payment.
So the first thing is just.
Interest.
I mean, one question about that, it's sort of, if we're taking that bond out, I guess we don't pay the bond back with money from the bond. Right? It's not typical, I guess.
You would think, well, this is nothing to do with, we were gonna do a bond anticipation note, you mean?
No, I just mean the bond we take out is going to be specifically for the construction.
Correct, at 1.75.
Right.
This is just the beginning of.
Question Shay.
Okay, so I guess I understand. For some reason, I was thinking that that was broadband related. But now that I understand that is not the case.
Oh, yeah, I'm the MMB and
Maybe
Municipal
bond.
Building Project and IMB. It is. confusing.
The contingency. Of 30,000. And it looks like sometimes we've used 20, sometimes we use 5, we've used 1,100 so far.
And it's not, I mean, I've used more out of it, but just hasn't shown up on this.
Right.
This expense.
What do you think that number would be?
What else we would use?
No, what do you think the number is? You say that it's not on here, so what is it?
What number?
The
How much do you think you've
contingency
spent
that
now?
you've been taking
Oh,
out.
I'd have to, print out and see the date. I don't
Ballpark?
know, 5,000-6,000. I think I paid for the new little playground out of that, for the new section. out of it. And then budgeted for another section under Public Works,
Right.
another 5,000 or 6,000. I'm just getting a couple smaller sections. But you just never know, and have never asked anybody what the percentage of a contingency should be for a budget this size, but. And years ago, when I did budgeting, every account had a contingency for 10 general government,
You know, I definitely
Section.
prefer this
Yeah.
approach. So that's fine, I just,
yeah. I mean, to me, it's just like a safety net. Or thing, but,
So just taking a step back and looking on page 1 again, we have not set off set an amount for the undesignated fund balance offset. Is that, am I missing? a page?
that's. Well, that comes under, where
Do we have
I
a,
think we have a revenue page.
you know, that's,
oh, okay, I made some more copies of it, I've given them to you, and I don't think we've changed anything on the revenue.
can we have it either? If folks, if everybody has their double under this.
Thank you. No, I don't think that we did make any big changes to the revenues because we decided not to add in what the 15% would be until after we saw what that was only the only big thing that we were gonna do.
Janet, do I have revenues of?
Yes, yes, if you get out of there,
I am just wondering what the bottom line budget is.
so right now, I have under revenues budgeted using, and it's on page 2, under general government. And, it's highlighted, we have 758,000 in our fund balance, so the auditor says. I'm anticipating, unless you want to change, there's $200,000, that would leave us 538,000 in there to cover. You should have enough in there to cover 2 months worth of expenses, that's standard.
So with that, where does that leave us on the bottom line of the budget compared to last year? I don't see that those numbers, we're looking at top line budget, right, of what we budgeted, but the offsets for revenues for undesignated fund balance offsets, and I'm just looking for the number that the town has to generate through taxes.
I don't think I can give you that, because there's overlay, there's, the school.
So, okay, so let's just talk about the town, and now I don't wanna talk about the school, there's also the county, and there's
Yeah.
stuff that we don't control
Right.
here at the select board.
Where is, she put it on the screen, FY24 budget, right, correct. I think that's it, so. Did you have to get out of the one that we? Did you X out of the budget?
I did not.
Okay,
I
X
just-
out,
Yes,
I can't read what that says.
Yes.
no. I don't.
Okay, so last year,
Just X out of that, and then,
out of revenues,
let me get my little cheat sheet, which has,
Cause I feel like we need to be, that's a more important number than the overall budgeted
No,
expenses for the town.
I don't see it.
so we only brought in $76,000 in 22. Off of page 2 in revenues, is that what I'm reading, right?
Would I have a page 2 in revenues?
No, I think that's not right.
That's just from
we're
out
looking
of
at-
those.
That's for
groupings.
general government
Okay.
only. And the big thing that's different is we did not use any undesignated fund balance to offset. And
That
as a
makes more
result,
sense.
there's $200,000.
Right, I see that now, I'm like, how did that?
Yeah.
this is my last year one, which I haven't done it this year yet, because up here it shows. Thank you.
Why, Jerry?
How are you?
Municipal.
For the grand total of
But what is the 686 in revenues? Is that what you are anticipating?
All of the revenues?
That's from last year, but it has.
In which case we'd be down significantly.
Well, no, not necessarily, if this is what we're looking at for last year, 758. Because I think we had a lot of CARES Act funding that came in as revenues last year.
But that's not included in our budget.
That's the
That
fund balance.
stays in the health center. And that would stay, anything they had stays in their fund balance. Their fund balance is separate than ours.
So
All right. What did you say, Shay? What's that six?
The 686, 372 in revenues. That is total.
That is page 5 of the revenues that you have. I've just given you.
Okay, so it has gone up some. From the older.
Oh, so I see, so 23 was 436 is what was budgeted. Right, so then really what we're looking at is 436. 300 off of that total of 3.9 million, when we're looking at sheet page 1. And then we're looking at a reduction of 686, 372.
And total of the revenue.
Six, on page 5,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
incorrect. I mean, correct.
And that makes sense because last year we didn't have any fund. Any of the fund balance transfer.
Correct. So that 200 is added in there.
You take the budget and then that number you reduce it by the revenue. Yeah. For a total budget.
Yes, that's right. So really, without any changes, my ballpark, we are roughly $300,000 below last year's budget in terms of what we would have to raise from taxpayers to pay for the budget. We're offsetting $200,000 with undesignated fund balance. There's additional revenues we're projecting. And so we're really at almost exactly 3.2 million this year. And last year was 3.48 million. So $280,000 difference between what the taxpayers would have to come up with for this budget, which is quite a big difference.
Almost a mil. Well, last year's mill was 370.
I would say add $100,000 in for paving then, you know, at least.
Right, I sort of wonder with numbers like that, if we're better off saving some of the capital or undesignated fund balance and not having a big shock next year when we don't have money to put, as we did last year, to offset with. We'd be better off sort of flatlining the budget, saving more money in capital reserve, putting money in paving.
Are you talking about from the, instead of the 200,000 going into this, do $100,000 of that into paving and then keeping the $100,000?
I'm
Or
thinking of, yeah, $100,000 in undesignated fund balance offset $100,000 in paving and perhaps bumping up a few line items other places if we need additional money in capital reserve accounts. This might be a good year to do that and still have a flat line budget.
Can you remind us, was it paving that dropped us between 21 and 22, the $300,000 in the fund balance?
Why the fund balance dropped?
Right, is that paving?
I don't know. There was, we couldn't use any. It just might have been expenses went over. You know, it's there to kind of catch any overages at the end of the year. And I never know until the audit, when the budget, when the auditor says, oh, you have this much.
Right, no, I mean, we just have, I mean, we had a $300,000 negative swing and now we've got a $500,000 positive swing, largely because we didn't budget any, to use any of the fund balance during this current fiscal year, so that it would build. So I'd hate to see it swing, like you said, way down, but at the same time, I don't want to be sitting on too much of that money and not, having the savings go to the taxpayer.
Right, and I think, I mean, the way I've thought about it in the past is that we are generally better off budgeting more and offsetting with undesignated fund balance than changing ourselves and raising, having the possibility of having a special, what do they call it, special assessment? you don't have enough
You
money
don't
to
want
run.
one of those.
No,
Right.
exactly, we don't want that, we don't want that at all.
I've never seen that, thank God, but I hear they're terrible.
Right, and so we don't wanna have to go back to the town and say we need more money, and having a relatively healthy undesignated fund balance is sort of the protection against that, and so it's a balance between having taxpayer funds that are not actively being used to run the town and having the town not be solvent, right? Which is not great.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like to the degree that we pay for an audit, I feel like advice on that kind of thing is where they could be most helpful for us. But
And for instance, the health center's fund balance this year is 101,000. And I thinking wanted to take, I'm taking 30,000 out of that to defray their budget. And I was first thinking of 50, and then she said, don't take that much, you know. I do ask her how much is there, and then I tell her what I wanna do, and then she
Yeah.
says whether it's practical or prudent.
Yeah.
But then again, it all depends on you all, I mean, you could tell me to.
so what I hear you suggest to was reducing the fund balance revenue that we were budgeting for this year by $100,000?
Yes, and budgeting $100,000 in the capital reserve for paving to, to essentially be prepared for the next time we pave. We're not gonna spend all that money this year in paving, but we'll probably spend certainly more than half of it.
And that would take us basically even to what we,
No, that would take us $80,000 less than last year. And so that is going to offset some of the small increase the school has. And I believe what is the county budget? We haven't set the county budget for next year yet.
I think,
Or is that what we just?
I think we did, yeah, I think
Which is-
it's gone
the
up,
one we just set, then it's
Yeah.
gone up. So.
yeah, no,
I just
it
can't-
and
I
it
don't
went up,
remember what the timing was on that.
went up $68,000. To 850,806.
So,
I think I'm more comfortable keeping it with either flatlining it or taking it lower, because also when we have the assessments that come through next year and everybody's appraisals, that's gonna make everybody's taxes go up also. And we're gonna be looking at trying to keep it
so
lower again.
the appraisals are not gonna make people's taxes go up.
Okay.
Right.
So the appraisals are a function of reapportioning how people's taxes are, who pays what percentage of the taxes. So if your property has increased in value compared to the other properties on the island.
Right.
Then your taxes will go up. Does that make sense? So for example, if all properties stay equally valuable compared to each other.
Right.
Then you might have a change in the mill rate and the overall valuations of the properties, but that's not gonna affect how much you pay in taxes. It's gonna mean, let's say all the properties are worth twice as much now, because that's just the way it's worked. That means that the mill rate is half as much and you pay the same amount in taxes.
Okay,
Because we're generating, how much the town has to, raise is all based on what the budget is. And if we are budgeting X dollars, that's the total. So it could mean, and like I'm sure it will mean, that some people's taxes go up, but that's a function of their property being worth more in relation to other properties compared to the last time the valuations
gotcha.
happened.
So I apologize for that. No,
I hear that a lot from people about.
Well, that's what the appraiser was telling them when they were going through and talking to them.
Right.
Was
So
when
valuations,
everybody was asking, that the evaluations, or that your valuations would go up, which causes your tax dollars to go up. Because he was joking around with a couple different people about different things that have been added onto their property, going, oh man, I should have waited a year.
so that's true though, right?
Right, but not in an excessive amount.
Right, so if
Yeah, it
you
would go up a
built
little
a
bit.
yeah, if you
but-
built a second house on your property, all of a sudden you have something worth a lot more than you're being taxed for, and that's your valuation is up and your taxes are up. That part's true. But yeah, I think.
All right, so in revenues, it's 100.
Now in the weeds on taxation and
100,000,
property valuation.
you're taking that from 200 to 100,000 and over under capital reserves for road reconstruction, we're putting 100 in there.
Capital reserve, so I think what we've discussed is 100,000 in roads and only $100,000 coming out of the capital reserve account. So we're offsetting just 100 and not 200. And as a result, the overall budget, just by my back of the envelope math, is roughly down $80,000 for the town.
fund balance, and this is capital.
And then we'll have another $100,000 next year in the undesignated fund balance, depending on where we are in terms of needing more money in capital reserve or offsetting a larger budget increase because we have not had an increase this year, so that'll be the trade-off.
Reduce.
I'm happy with that, if everybody else is happy with that. I don't think we vote on this right now, it's still a workshop.
No, and yeah, so I will make these corrections and then come up with a new total. And maybe at that point, I will
We have
do
another
this
workshop.
worksheet.
No more workshops, this is it. And I think we have to vote on it at a select board meeting.
I mean, you still can tweak it or whatever.
This is not the last time, although this is hopefully the last time. We'll have an opportunity in the future, but we hope to be as very close right now.
Right.
So before we,
Can I just ask
Yes,
one,
please.
one question? For next summary, is it possible to add the total revenues from the previous year to the summary work? The top worksheet too, just to make it easy to do those comparisons?
yeah, and to the extent that we have a real school budget too, it would be nice to see how all of that has fit both this year and for the past couple of years in terms of where we are with overall town taxation, how much money we're bringing in for the school and the town together.
Yeah. I think would have a budget discussion with them going into the process, and I wish we had done that this year.
Yeah, we talked about doing it, we've done it once in the past about
Yeah.
trying to coordinate so we can, if there's a
Did the
large.
superintendent come once early on and talk about?
It was maybe a couple years ago.
you know, something like that.
No,
Anyway,
I think it was your new one. So when you say you want revenues on the cover page, do you mean like,
I think the numbers that we're looking for are the overall amount that it has to be raised by taxes for the town, which is gonna be what we budget less what we budget for revenues, right?
cause I know I just put in the big ones, the big revenues like public works, auto excise, you know, the other ones are. They don't amount to much.
Yeah, it'd just be good to know like where we stand with how much we have to raise in taxes this year compared to what it's been last.
Yeah. And this is very huge, I probably will update that.
Yeah, that's
Get it
very
closer to
helpful.
the
So that auto excise is listed in,
public, I think is it public works?
right, yeah, it's,
Yeah, I mean, that's the big,
actually,
yeah, auto excise, page 3.
okay, yeah. Yeah, but it's still really, only a, a quarter of the overall revenue year to year.
Right, but I mean, like, you're looking at your fines and, you know, other things, other fees and things.
Yeah, no, I just want the grand total revenue.
Which, that's really on the back page there, page 5.
Yeah, I think we're just looking for an aggregated, this is what the budget was, this is what the offsets were, this is what the delta was that we had to generate from the taxes. So we can look at like, it's nice to look at overall what did we budget, but it's, I think, a very useful number to look at what we actually had to generate in tax revenue each year. Which is what I think that number would be. So, with that, let's take 5 and be ready for the select board meeting. Unless there's any last comments on the budget before we take 5. Hearing none, all right.